Okay, this hearing is being held to consider AR 16-20, petition to amend the zoning regulations, Kimberly Simoncini. Is there any correspondence?
This is correspondence.
Chairman, I'm going to step down.
Just for the record, Mr. Neri has recused himself, and Ellen and I am going to reseat you for this, for Christine, for this public hearing.
This is correspondence list number 1, received through July 5th, 2016, in reference to AR 16-020, petition to amend zoning regulations, Kimberly A. Simoncini, section 10.52, contractors, businesses, and storage yards, section 26.1.4M, outside storage. May 5th, 2016, letter from Carol Zamansky, DEEP/OLISP. May 11th, 2016, letter from J.H. Torrance Town, River Cod. May 18, 2016, letter from James Giulietti, Scribe, SCRCOG. May 31st, 2016, letter from Richard Roberts, Halloran and Sage, LLP. May 31st, 2016, letter from John Ruskowski, CME Associates, Inc. July 4th, 2016, email from Dan and Linda Wilkes. And finally, July 4th, 2016, second email from Dan and Linda Wilkes.
Okay, is there a applicant? Would like to come forward? Ladies and gentlemen, if you feel you're going to speak for, against, or general comments, now's the time to come down and fill out the name and address.
Good evening, my name is Kimberly Simoncini, and I am here. I'm here in regard to an amendment to the contractors, businesses, and storage yards. And just for clarification, I don't have a site plan or an application before the planning and zoning. This is just a discussion that I was having over the past several months. I came before the Planning and Zoning Commission to point out some discrepancies and some areas where the language wasn't consistent with or relevant to a contractor's yard. And in those discussions, I agreed to come before them with an amendment. And partly because I previously, many years ago, served on the Planning and Zoning Commission, I am familiar with our regulations and amending them. And so I agreed to take on this task. So I know that some of you are concerned in regard to the residential district, and I just want you to understand, if you look at the proposal under 10-52, section 2A, the 50-foot buffer for all residential districts is still proposed and is not being changed. The second change will come in section C2 for outside storage areas. We're proposing a 6-foot high fence that is opaque or solid, or a natural barrier composed of native species. So it could be plantings instead of an actual fence. The outside storage shall have the following setbacks. Now, this was addressed because originally the setbacks that were being used for storage were the same setbacks that were being used for the buildings and some other setbacks, and it wasn't really appropriate to the actual storage outside and the use of the land. So those proposals are specific to zones, and the first zone is B4. The setback from the front lot line is being proposed at 25 feet, and all other lot lines is 15 feet. In Industrial 1, I1 zone, the setback from the front lot line is proposed at 10 feet, and the side setbacks and rear setback 10 feet as well. And for the I2 industrial zone, the front setback is proposed at 10 feet, and the side and rear setbacks are proposed at 5 feet. And the second section of that paragraph says that there shall be a 50-foot setback for all residential districts. So again, that's reiterated. The next area, which I also believe that there may have been some concerns, had to do with liquid and hazardous material. I'm not trying to soften the regulation or change it in any way. It's just that there was a reference to it, and it's actually, there's another reference in the zoning regulations that speaks to that. So the only thing we're doing there is we're just changing it so that you are referred to section 10.58. And you have to follow those regulations. So it's not making it easier or doing anything in that regard. It's just clarifying so that you go to the right section of the regulations. The next part is in regard to stockpiling of earth products and other items, and that can be allowed, will only be allowed on, if you have a special exception per section 10.58. Again, there was a reference to section 10.53, and that was incorrect, so this is just a correction. The next is to do with the transport of equipment in and out of the site shall be conducted between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. except during emergency circumstances, and that was added in. The next section is 10.52.3, which has to do with procedures, and that is another area where they were speaking to handling of hazardous material. Now, each contractor will have to have a plan, and they will have to provide that plan. So this doesn't preclude that requirement in any way. It's just referring them to a different section. And the other item there is that originally it said a list of the quantity and type of material being stored, and now that's being changed to the list of typical types of material and equipment to be stored, because sometimes a contractor may be storing something that they're using for the first few years, but maybe 5-6 years later they're doing something different, or another contractor buys the property and he does different things. I mean, it can't be specific to, I have a roller or a compressor or something sitting there. It can be, in general, the kind of equipment that a contractor would use. And the last section is, actually, what section? So under section 26.1.4, there is a reference to outside storage displays of merchandise and different things. That would not relate to a contractor, and so that section is actually going to be excluded from the contractor's business and storage yard, because it's not relevant. Contractors in the heavy highway and construction industry are not putting displays out to sell on the side of their road, so it's not appropriate. And that's it. Those are my proposals.
Okay, the hearing is now open for any questions or comments. We're going to start with, is anybody here who would like to speak in favor of the application? Is anybody here who would like to speak in favor of the application? Is anybody here who would like to speak in favor of the application? Is there anybody here who would like to speak against the application? Again, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be here all night. Please, I beg you, 2 minutes.
short and sweet to the point. I'm Mike Milano, property owner in Clinton, 67 West Main Street, and 19 Knott Place, self-storage is MJM Self-Storage. And I just have 2 minutes of time, so I'll make it short. So the two things I really want to say here is, one, and this is about this application as well as a lot on the agenda tonight, petition to amend zoning regulations. It's a very popular process lately, in the last, I don't know how long, but it's been a popular process. And I know you guys, you were telling us how you go by the state statute and you're doing everything right and all that stuff. And I'm sorry. So when I know the spot zoning is a word everybody doesn't like to hear, so there's a way you can go around it. And the way you go around it is you come in and you do a zoning amendment. And so when people come in to do amendments and they come into the town hall and they say, hey, I want to do this for my property, they're guided to an area where they say, well, you can amend the regulation. So what they do is they come in and at no cost to the town, as long as you're going to carry the ball, you can go and you could amend that regulation. You can write whatever you want. And you can come in and you can propose it. And going back to this application here, there's some history behind this application. And in this specific one on 19 on Knott Place, Neri Construction has a property, and it came before the ZBA and Planning and Zoning, and they wanted some relief on the setbacks on the sides, the rear, and the front. I came to the meeting, I believe, I don't know, maybe a couple other people did, I don't know who did, but I was against it because if you know the property has machinery all over it, as well as other properties in town that they own. So I came there, I said my piece, went through the due process, and at the end of the due process, the Neris were able to get granted zero setback on the sides. One side of the property is against the residence, the actual residential property. It's actually zoned I-2. The family lives there. The road got developed, they still live there, and so they ignored that the old couple lives there, and they went to zero on his side. So there's a tractor trailer parked right along the property line within a couple feet of it, where the man's in his pool looking at the tractor trailer. On the opposite side of the property, they gave him the zero. Both sides are zero, the rear is a zero. The front, the Neris didn't get their way. So the front of the
I gotta stop you right there.
okay.
You're getting specific to the property.
Yeah, it's on the
This
application.
is a zoning
Amendment.
regulation change.
But their name's on the amendment.
That is true, but we need the testimony. Listen,
I'll get short, I'll get to the...
if we move forward,
Yeah.
if they should move forward,
Okay.
there would then be a process where you would speak about the actual site.
Okay, so let me talk about how it affects everybody in that zone. That's better? Okay. So what the process now brings us to the point where they're going to just affect everybody. So they come in and they have a proposal before us tonight where they want to change the setbacks. So they want to go, and the things that really strike me is I happen to drive on Nod Road every day where there's residences on one side of the road, and there's a bunch of the residences are actually zoned I-2, and then there's businesses all over the place. Huge impact to all those people on Nod Road. So what happens is, which got me here tonight, I wasn't even going to come because I'm also lost faith in the process, but I found out that the Neris are looking at a property right now on Nod Road, right next to Shore TV, and between Shore TV and VIP, which has a decent amount of frontage along Nod Road. So if these rules were going to be changed, they theoretically could put their equipment within, it's an I-2 zone, so they can get within 10 feet, if I understand it correctly, 10 feet of the front setback. Okay. And once that happens, it's contagious, and then you'll have all these properties doing it, and it'll just be industrial labor. So my point is, there's too much the businesses, industrial is blended in with residents, and there's too much going on here where it should be ignored, and just because one person wants to satisfy their needs at the expense of everybody else. That's what
Hi, my name is Marion Weiss Hewert. I grew up on Beach Road Extension. I have property on Beach Road Extension. On the way down, went down 145 and came back. And I am sorry to say that looked like, if I was going to go down Beach Road Extension, it looked like what would be at the end of that would be a garbage dump, because it looks bad. And as far as this person putting up natural zoning, I guess a pile of dirt could be a natural zoning.
No,
It could be.
I just want to clarify,
No, it's someone.
just for everybody. The subject here is either a 14-foot high fence.
I thought they said 6, bring it down to 6.
Right now, you need a 14-foot high fence, which does not sound reasonable to most people. It sounds like a very large wall.
Right.
They're proposing to bring it down to 6, or a biological fence, which would be trees, not dirt.
Well, I guess I was being
I just want to make sure.
sarcastic. Okay? That's the way I say it, sarcasm. But the thing is, if they have this property on Nod Road and other places, this is an old community. The whole, from the Groveway down to Westbrook Town Line on Route 1, it's an old housing. And to take this and take one piece of it and make it look trashy, I don't care what a fence does. It's not going to help. It's not going to epitomize the neighborhood. It's an old neighborhood. If these people have places on, I mean, if they had a place in New York City, I can understand they want to build a place in Clinton. But they have a place on Knott Road. What do they need a place on Main Street for? It just doesn't make sense. I appreciate the fact, obviously, that Neri recused himself, excuse me. But basically, I am absolutely against this, and that's what I wanted to register with the board and with the people, because this is an important thing to the people that live down that street and put their all into having a nice yard and keeping the things nice. What's the sense of them doing that if you're going to just let them come in and ruin it? Thank you. Please turn there.
This is still for against?
That's correct.
Oh, yeah.
That's correct. Name and address, is that what you need?
Yes, I really caution everybody, please do not be site-specific. It's very important. This is a zoning regulation amendment. This could be any commercial contractor. One of the reasons for this is maybe to clean up the regulation so you look at less from your house and not more. But we're not going to talk about site-specific at this point, only the regulation, please.
All right, Lawrence Rometta, 22 Beach Road Extension, property owner here in Clinton, Connecticut. I'd like to thank Mike Milano for standing up, and I'd like to thank Mr. Milano for pointing out that this is a global change. This is town-wide. It isn't site-specific. It's a little hard to say. I prepared something here, and I'd like to read it out to you. I think the petition is self-serving. I'm opposed to petition AR 16-20 to amend section 10.52 and section 26.1.4 parenthetical M. I'm opposed to the petition to amend those sections on contractors' business and storage yard and outside storage. I believe the passage would have an adverse effect on residential properties in the vicinity and town-wide of these activities. By relaxation of the current setbacks, buffers, screening, materials accountability, hours of operation, to name but a few. I'd like to quote from section of your zoning, and I'm sure you're all aware of it, 10.52, the purpose, 10.52.2. The purpose of these regulations is to permit contractors' businesses, office, and storage yards for equipment and materials associated with this type of business in a way that ensures that the use is compatible with surrounding areas and protects the public health, safety, and welfare of the community. This is from your own statutes. I'd like to close and ask that the commission deny the petition in its entirety. Thank you very much.
Sir, would you be able to submit that for the public record, please?
Pardon?
Would you be willing to submit that for the public record?
Surely.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm Diane Rometta, 22 Beach Road Extension. I'm a single wife of Lawrence. I'm opposed to this amendment change because it's under the special exception regulations. And under that, guess what, guys? Every B zone in Clinton, every R zone is subject to a petition for a special exception, which means you too, if you look at the photograph that has the stop sign in it on the paperwork that you got, you're going to look at that for a long time and you could be subject to that having be right next to you. So I really think that Clinton needs to look very long and hard at this proposed amendment because it doesn't just affect us, it affects the whole town. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bill Knackle, I live on 40 Meadow Road in Clinton. Right behind me, I got a scrapyard. I'm looking at 13.6 tractor trailers for my fence. They're not high enough. I get smoke, diesel fuel fumes in my house. I hear noise every single day. I hear a beeper buzzer go off every 10 minutes. And this town made that road what it is. It used to be a nice road, now it's a slump. I think every single one of you people should get off your seat and drive down there and look and see what you created. Because it's junk. I lived there for 28 years and I got to put up with it. And I go down there, I talk to zoning, we'll look into it. Yeah, they just do that to pacify it, nothing else. So people, be strong. Stick up for what you believe in.
Are you speaking against me?
Hi, yeah, can you hear me? Put it to your mouth. How's that function? Hi, I'm Pam Fritz. I live at 14 Old Road in Clinton. I am president of the Clinton Taxpayers Association, and we were the people that put out the flyer that notified everybody of these issues that were coming up today. Yes, there are many issues on, but right now I'm addressing specifically on behalf of the Taxpayers Association, our opinion regarding the change in this regulation. First of all, I'd like to say that Plan of Conservation and Development, if you would read that little, I'd like to read that, says, talks about buffers, and this amendment does address buffers, okay? Buffers mentioned 18 times on page 43, buffers. Appropriate landscape and visual buffers to avoid conflict with adjacent residential areas, and that meaning between the buffer between industrial and residential. The problem right now is this amendment lowers regulation standards to a great degree. And I want to point out to you very specifically where these standards presently in this town are being violated. The violations are not being enforced in the current regulations. There are many, many industrial sites. I have to be site specific just to show you specific areas where residential people are suffering greatly. We have people from Bonnie Lane here, we have people from Bonnie Lane here. Do raise your hand.
Pam, we're not going to do this. If you have something to say,
Yes, I do.
Pam, if you have something to say about the application before you,
Yes.
then please state
I'm stating about the application.
You are not going to be site-specific.
I've got to use examples
You are
of
not going to
violations that
use-
are going on at this time.
is not-
Why can't I use those
Pam.
violation
We are
examples?
not here to talk about violations. We are here,
Against the regulations. You're going to lower the regulations that are presently in existence.
Pam, you-
People aren't using aren't paying attention to the present regulations that are.
Pam, you sat on this commission for a long time. You know the rules better than me. So please stick to the
I
application.
don't know, how much more specific do you want me to be? How do you want me to be specific if I cannot show you examples?
I don't want you to be specific. I want you to talk about the application for text change.
Changing it, yes, we're changing the regulations.
That's
The height, okay, we'll talk about the height.
Perfect.
Okay, very good. I'd like to point out, and many of you saw this is an example of height, okay? An example that exists presently of height between a residential area and the industrial area. It's an example, okay? And this is, if you see, if any of you got this, then you see very specifically, and you all see very specifically, that there is a lot of contractors storage, which this addresses the contractors storage regulation here, that is shown with a residence height, fence height, and the height between the residential and the industrial is nil. Nil. There is no vegetation. There is nothing. This occurs right now. I'm trying to explain this to you. I would have had this printed out, but unfortunately...
Pam, I really need you to stick to the 2 minutes, please. We
I
have a room full of
was
people and
hoping
a
that
long
someone
night.
else would speak and yield me some time, because I would like to go through this and let you see exactly. I'd like the commission to see exactly what I'm talking about. The gentleman who spoke recently about Meadow Road, that's a specific example of height of this regulation on fencing. The tractor trailers are what encompass the height. And that's all that encompasses the height. So if it's lowered with this regulation, then all of the people on Meadow Road will have to put up with that lowering. I want to address the issue, it's in this, that's being addressed in the regulation here too, and that has to do with the times of the contractors' transport of equipment in and out. This time is not being adhered to. Nothing like this time is presently being adhered to.
Pam.
So this regulation needs to be fixed.
Pam, we are not going to sit here tonight and talk about what is not being enforced. Please talk about the
I'm
application before
talking
us.
about the application. With the application, you are going to lower the standards of time enforcement. And at this particular point in time, I can give you specific examples where people are not paying attention to that. Trucks are coming in all day and all night in certain places.
And I'm not going to allow that as testimony. If you would like to testify on the regulation.
Well, excuse me, but somebody in the commission, please tell me what I'm supposed to use as an example? I have specific examples
If you want to give.
that pertain to this regulation that you're changing.
Pam.
Why can't I use those examples?
If you want to make a formal complaint, there is a process, and you can do that at any point you want. Tonight, this room of people is going to be here for a long time, and we would like to talk about the actual application that's before
I
us.
am talking about the application.
She's making the point that, she's making the
People, this is not a public forum in that way.
But she's making the point
Ma'am,
that the
ma'am.
rules that we have in effect are not being observed.
Ma'am.
So why change it?
Ma'am, I'm not going to ask again. I speak, she speaks, and the commission speaks. You will have your chance. This is an incredibly difficult job. Is there any more you would like to say about the actual
I will
application that
talk
is before
about the
you?
height requirement. The height requirement is being lowered is a bad idea to do. Bad idea. That's a bad idea, okay? And again, I could cite many examples, but you won't let me do it, so I can't do that. Okay, all right. The fence height, the setback requirements. The setback requirements should not be lowered, okay? The setback requirements presently aren't being enforced, which I can't address that particularly, but I can show you many, many, many examples of where they're not being enforced, okay? Are we devaluing residential properties? This change to this amendment will devalue residential properties, and I can specifically show you where this has happened in the past because of the fact that there is not enough buffers. So my suggestion on this application is that it be looked at and changed to increase the protection of the value of residential properties. And I'd like to make another comment too. Very often, and I've heard the commission say this, that oh well, if you were going to put your house there, you shouldn't have put it there when industrial was right there. Well, these people that are suffering right now had these homes at these locations, these very locations, prior to all of this residential blight, this industrial blight. It's there. So that has to be, what I'm talking about, yes, I am specifically talking about. I notice in the procedures, all of these things that are crossed out in the procedures, those things should not be crossed out in the procedures because people are being affected by the fact of spill incidents and procedures, reporting, standard operating procedures, et cetera, et cetera. And again, the town plan of conservation.
Next.
I'm sorry.
Okay, but we clearly see that when somebody goes way past their 2-minute time,
I'll give her my time.
it doesn't work that way, ma'am. Please, I beg all of you, we haven't even gotten to the big one.
This is a big one. This is a big one.
The bigger one. Okay, 2 minutes, please. Next, please.
Big one.
I just want to say in closing that I wish I could have had the opportunity to illustrate to the members of the commission specifically where this particular amendment is very, very dangerous to residential property values. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak against the application?
Jeff Cashman, 66 River Road. I'd like to make it really clear in this room tonight. Does anybody know in this town where there's another fence that's 14 foot tall? I'm a truck driver in this town. I've not seen one anywhere. I've delivered more mulch, done more business with people. I don't know where there's a 14-foot fence until you get out onto the highway and it's called a sound barrier. We have two different items here tonight. We have an item here where we talk about stockade fence and we talk about the 6-foot law, and that 6-foot zoning regulation that's here, anything over 6 foot is considered a structure and has to have setbacks. It's in your own zoning regulations. The original idea of stockade fence was for animals, and it was a state statute, and Eric should probably know it, that the state statutes were there for homeowners or people who own property, that when they ran animals through our town, that you were to fence those properties off so that the animals wouldn't go on your property. That's the whole idea of the smooth side going out to the neighbor so that the animals would not take that fence down. That's why the term stockade fencing. 6-foot fencing in the agricultural business is one of the most standard industry fencing that you can possibly have. We're talking an industry tonight where the zoning regulation coming forward talks about a contractor's yard. It has nothing to do with anything to do with agriculture. It talks about the individual wanting to have a 6-foot tall fence. If you're sitting in your residential property and you're sitting there and you want to look at those sound barriers that are on the highway, then that's where you should be speaking tonight. This is strictly for contractors and contractors' yards. Today, if you're not in the town trying to be concerned about other people's property with the equipment that you have and sitting here trying to make sure that you the difference between your contractor, agricultural, or your personal use in your yard, please tell me where you find local at a Home Depot, you won't find anywhere in the store you can find a 14-foot fence to put it up to be cost effective to be with your neighbors. I don't know of any possibility of any fence with the winds we talked about in the storms that's going to survive anything in a 14-foot tall fence. that is going to land on your property 14 feet in or 14 feet out. But I do know one thing, that the properties that they're talking about sometimes are horrific, that sit there and depreciate your hard-earned homeowners' properties. So today, we are not talking about farm, we are not talking about residential, we're talking about contractor yards and what you anticipate. But I don't see anything like that anywhere in our town except for up on the highway.
So Jeff, are you for or against or general comment? Because I was against, but you sounded like you're for. Just want to make sure in the record. You're against it? I'm not being funny.
He did say against it, he did.
I said against it.
I just confused, just because it would take away the 14-foot tall fence. So the regulation would get rid of the 14-foot tall fence and have a 6-foot fence.
Yeah, but they don't use, they don't put it up anyways.
Oh, okay.
I stated that so that the commission could weigh both of those. That's
Fine,
the
so
only, I made
I
a
just want to make
statement,
sure the record.
but I'm against this 14-foot tall fence issue.
Okay,
Okay.
sure. Okay, anybody else against the application? One last time, anybody else against the application? Again, I request people please come down and sign up well in advance and try to stick to 2 minutes, please.
It's on. It'll always be on, people. Just put up your mouth and talk.
Okay, my name is Joyce Allen. I live at 13 Indian Drive. I am the treasurer of the Clinton Taxpayers Association, and I definitely am definitely against this. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else who is against the application? Okay, anybody with general comments for the application?
I'm against.
People,
Is anybody else against this
I
application?
plead with you, if you're against something, please
Please go over this stuff.
sign up. And if you're only going to say what the person in front of you said, less, not more, would be great.
My name is Cameron Vickers. I live at 10 Spencer Hill Road in Clinton, and I'm definitely against this change in this regulation.
Thank you very much. Pass it.
My name is Harriet Stein. I live at 6 Mohawk Drive. I'm Vice President of the Clinton Taxpayers Association. And I want to go on record saying that I am definitely opposed to this proposal.
My name is Dave King. I live on Kelseytown Road, and I teach engineering courses throughout the United States in colleges and universities. I just want to make a general statement. I came to Clinton during the year of 1962 and 63. At that time, Clinton had no zoning regulations. An older resident told me he did not want any zoning because he would be able to do what he wanted to do with his land. He soon changed his mind about zoning when a neighbor started storing junk and equipment along the border. Thank you.
And again, anybody who wants to speak against the application. Okay, moving on. Anybody who has general comments about the application?
Thank you very much. Kurt Carden, on Osprey Common South. I have some land of conservation and development citations that I want to pass out. Only one of them relates to this particular application, and it's the last one on this sheet. And I think Ms. Fritz already referred to some of this, but it is that the buffers are listed, I believe 18 times in the Plan of Conservation and Development. And specifically, it says that, just keep going. Oops. It says that the future development should be consistent with the industrial scheme of the neighborhood, but with appropriate landscape and visual buffers to avoid conflict with adjacent residential areas. I only commend this to you because anything that you do clearly should be consistent with the Plan of Conservation and Development. I also want to say thank you for your service, though I'm not going to feel sorry for you because I've sat where you sit, and I understand what you have to deal with. So anyway, thank you very much.
Any other general comments for this application? One last time, any other general comments for this application?
I've already signed in, but I wanted to,
He doesn't need it.
No, hang on, one second. I've got a very valid point here, okay? Hang on a second. We do have a fire marshal. Ed, you're in the fire department. No, I'm just saying, we have a fire marshal. I wasn't pointing out, we have a fire marshal in our town. I want you to picture something for just a second. I want you to picture a major fire that maybe Ed might have to go to, or anybody might have to go to in the middle of the night with a fire. I want you to figure some of the properties the way that they are. How would those firemen fight that fire comfortably in keeping the safety of your people in their homes and in those residential businesses? What safety do we give up when we sit here and we say setbacks or anything like that there? The idea of setbacks in our zoning regulations were there so that the buildings and the fire department could battle in a safety issue of maybe a structure fire to make sure that your home from a fire was going to be protected away from each other in that 35 feet or 25 feet with everybody abiding by those regulations would be safe as the fire department would battle that fire. The original reason for setbacks on anything was a fire department issue. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, any other general comments? Okay, with that, the public portion is now closed. Kimberly, can you please come back up? I'm going to let you review anything you would like to. You don't have to speak at this point. But if there's a few things you'd like to say, you can take this opportunity.
Okay, so I really, I heard what people are saying, and I don't know if everyone understands, but that every contractor would have to come before this commission with an application, and that would be considered and reviewed, different from what's happening here, which is corrections that I worked hard to collaborate with this Planning and Zoning Commission to help them to clean up this regulation. It wasn't for any other reason except to work with them and to make this town a better town. I mean, all of you are standing here saying that you care, but you know, I'm a person just like all of you. I just want to work and I want to live. Every other contractor, there's a bunch of them back there, you know. We're out there doing good work for everybody, and I care about this town immensely. That's why I came to do this, and that's why I'm here tonight. So I hope everybody understands that. And I know that the Planning and Zoning Commission will review everything and take everything that you've all said under consideration. But you also have to understand that these contractors, including myself, we need to be able to operate. And we're trying to do it and treat our neighbors well. And I know that maybe you don't feel that way, but you know, sometimes the material that's on a contractor's yard isn't the prettiest stuff to look at. But you know what? We make a lot of contributions to you. We're your neighbors. We teach your kids CCD. we're your friends, we create jobs for you, we stir this economy. And I don't think it's fair that sometimes people are making some improper comments about us. We all do care just as much as you care.
Okay, and with that, would any of the commissioners have questions for Kim? Kim? Not yet.
I do have a question.
Okay, I'll walk the microphone. Just going to be questions for you.
Okay. I'm looking at, wait, that kind of 10.52.2. I'm looking at 10.52.2, C3. The outside storage area shall have, and it goes through the setbacks. And some of the side setbacks and front setbacks are down in the 5 and 10 foot range.
Correct.
And it appears to me that that may be in conflict with 10.52.2B, where it says there shall be adequate access provided to all portions of the facility for fire suppression equipment and personnel. A standard lane on a highway is 12 feet wide, and in terms of being able to get a fire truck or an ambulance around the back of the material, given the fact that you also have to maneuver, I don't see how a 5 to 10 foot setback addresses that emergency access to rescue someone or something of that sort. My other question is probably more directed at Eric and this the fence around one of these properties. Do our regulations address the fact that there might be 2 adjacent contractor storage yards, each of which might be putting up a 6-foot fence, and the access to the fence, how far apart the 2 fences are, and access to them for maintenance and repair? I can see 2 fences 6 inches apart and an issue with them. Finally, the natural species as opposed to a fence. I mean, I imagine you're thinking of something like dense evergreens, but is that an adequate security feature? I mean, you can squeeze through trees. Curious kids can squeeze through trees. A fence certainly amounts to better security than a natural barrier. Those are my questions.
So it was my understanding that the fence and my proposal for the natural barrier, that was more to block the view so that it wasn't unsightly and that you couldn't see behind there. It wasn't to do with safety, it was to do with your view from the road. And the natural barrier actually is proposed by this commission, and I incorporated it into the regulation, because I think there are a lot of people that feel that putting the shrubs and bushes up is a better looking situation than fences everywhere, so that was the proposal. And I think that this commission will consider either, so there's the option of either. In regard to access for safety, each time you go in for a site plan review, that will be addressed there. And usually there's, one of the reasons you make a very valid point is that if I have a piece of property and I put my building in the middle of the property, I certainly don't want to put all of my material and equipment around my building because then no one can get into my building. So the most logical place I would put it is on the outskirts of my property, leaving the middle area open to access my building. And that was one of the things that we were discussing. When you talk about setbacks, we were talking about building setback, and now your building's in the middle, and certainly even all of you as residents, you don't stockpile your leaves and your wood right by your house. You put it out on the outskirts by your shed that you also put on the outskirts. You don't put it all in the middle of your yard, and that's exactly what the concept would be, to put it toward the outside so that there is access around it. But just to speak to that, obviously every applicant comes here and the fire marshal reviews all of those applications to make sure everything is safe.
Okay, but you want this? Well, just to clarify. Okay. You do envision that you would put, say, a pile of gravel, pebbles, or something of that nature as close as 5 feet to the outside fence. And if one of your workers were to fall down the far side, it could, then it could be an issue in terms of rescue or something.
That's just hypothetical, I'm sorry, that's not something
Anybody else from the commission who has any comments, questions? I'd just like to make a couple of statements, and most of it is for the general public, and I always want the general public to be well informed. This is right now, if you want a contractor storage yard, you can have a contractor storage yard. We have contractor storage yards. When somebody builds your road, they store stuff somewhere so they can build your road. This is only to amend the text for the regulation. It is not going to be for everywhere in Clinton. This will not allow contractor storage yards, say on Jefferson Circle. So the thought of all of a sudden we're allowing contractor storage yards to go next to your house, that would not happen. This would only be allowed in the B4 zone, the I1 zone, and the I2 zone. If somebody wanted, I want to reiterate, if somebody wanted a contractor storage yard, they would have to come before us with an actual application. The other thing about the fence, I sat on inland wetlands. Some of these areas are near wetlands, and one of the ideas and one of the reasons we recommended a biological fence, which could well exceed 6 feet, could be 20 feet someday. And that was something we thought we might want next to a wetland rather than an actual structure being near the wetlands. And, as I just got a note, this would still have a 50-foot setback from residential zones. So this would not, if you had a house, they would not be 5 feet from your property. Okay, with that, do I have a motion to close?
You finish general comments?
General comments were over a long time ago.
I have a general comment.
And they were over a long time ago. Once Kim came back up.
This is more pervasive in the town.
Ma'am, I said at the beginning of the hearing, I think everybody heard me. When I close it, I think I did general comments 5 times.
Okay, but the
It's
public
over.
needs to hear that
With
this
that.
is more pervasive than even CBS tonight.
Ma'am.
This is more pervasive.
Ma'am.
This will seep into
The only thing
other-
I ask this public to do is to respect the process that was here well before me.
I do respect the process.
Please respect it. It is not my policy. It's
But
been
if-
here a
if
long
the
time, and if you're
applicant
still talking, you're not respecting the process.
If the applicant got
Okay,
a
with that, with the commission,
second
I'd like to
voice,
grant to
we
close this
should.
public hearing.
I like the second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Can you show your hands for me? Against? Motion passes. At this point, I'm going to invite Mr. Neri back into the room. Sorry, already in the room.
He never left, he was hiding.